Hey everyone, welcome back to Pearls of Motherhood. I'm Diana, and today I want to talk about someone I spent 13 years imagining, the mother I thought I'd be. For 13 years, I wanted to be a mom. 13 years. That's a long time. Long enough to imagine birthdays, long enough to imagine first days of school, long enough to imagine bedtime stories, or to imagine the kind of mom I'd be. And if I'm being honest, I did a lot. I imagined a version of motherhood, but more than that, I imagined a version of myself, the mother I thought I'd be. And the funny thing is, she never showed up. Not because motherhood disappointed me, not because motherhood wasn't everything I had hoped for, but because motherhood was real and reality had opinions. I think one of the most surprising things about finally becoming a mother was discovering that getting what I wanted didn't magically eliminate struggle. Somewhere along the way, I had absorbed this idea that gratitude would protect me, that wanting motherhood so desperately would somehow make the hard parts easier. Then, after 13 years of infertility, loss, treatments, waiting, hoping, and praying, that I would be so grateful just to be there that nothing would really bother me. I thought gratitude would cancel out difficulty. I thought love would cancel out exhaustion. I thought wanting something enough would make me immune to struggling with it. And looking back now, I can see how deeply human that belief is and how completely wrong it was. Because motherhood didn't end my humanity, it amplified it. The mother I imagined was calm, patient, present. She appreciated every moment. She never wished time away. She would never count down to bedtime. She never needed a break. She never felt outtouched or overwhelmed. She never lost her temper and she never questioned herself. She was also completely fictional. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I think every mother creates a version of herself before motherhood arrives. Maybe yours wasn't the same as mine. Maybe you imagine being more organized, more patient, more playful, more adventurous, more relaxed, or more present. Whatever it was, I bet she was impressive. And I bet she wasn't entirely real either. Because when motherhood arrives, something fascinating happens. Your child enters the picture, and children have this incredible ability to expose every assumption you've ever made about parenting, about yourself, about life. Suddenly, motherhood isn't happening in your imagination anymore. It's happening in your kitchen at 2 a.m., in the middle of a grocery store tantrum, or while you're trying to brush tiny teeth attached to a tiny human who has decidedly, this is absolutely not going to happen. And reality starts editing the story you created. One of the hardest things for me to admit is that I struggled after my daughter was born. Not because I didn't love her, not because I wasn't grateful, not because I regretted becoming a mother. None of those things are true. The truth was more complicated. I loved her completely. I was grateful beyond words, and I was struggling all at the same time. What did my struggle look like? Laundry. So much laundry. When people imagine postpartum anxiety, they often imagine panic attacks or crying or obvious distress. And sometimes it does look like that, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it looks productive. Mine looked like washing laundry, folding laundry, ironing laundry, putting laundry away, and then looking for more laundry. I had just had a C section. I should have been resting, recovering, healing, bonding with my baby. Instead, I was walking up and down stairs, which is a major no no. I was trying to stay ahead of everything, trying to make sure every task was complete, trying to make sure nothing was forgotten, trying to make sure everything was okay. And here's the strange part: I wasn't alone. I had help, so much help. I had family, support, people who loved me, people who were actively trying to take things off my plate. And yet I couldn't stop. At the time, I thought I was being productive, responsible, helpful, even. But looking back, I think I was just trying to create certainty because motherhood had introduced something I wasn't prepared for: uncertainty. Because I like my roadmaps. I had a plan, I had a vision, and it was going to follow through until it didn't. One of the gifts of time is perspective. At the time, I thought I was doing what needed to be done. Laundry needed to be washed, meals needed to be cooked, the house needed to be picked up, bottles needed to be cleaned. Everything felt urgent. Everything felt important. And if I could just stay ahead of it, maybe I would finally feel okay. But here's what's interesting: the laundry was never really about the laundry. The dishes weren't really about the dishes. The checklists weren't really about the checklists. It took me years and honestly a lot of self reflection to realize that I wasn't trying to finish chores. I was actually trying to quiet uncertainty. I recently came across a psychological concept called intolerance of uncertainty. And I remember reading about it and thinking, wait, this is what I was doing. Intolerance of uncertainty doesn't mean you dislike surprises. It means your brain experiences uncertainty as something that needs to be solved immediately. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even distressing. So your brain starts looking for certainty wherever it can find it. For me, certainty looked like folding towels, a clean kitchen, an empty laundry basket, that everything was put away, everything was checked off. Because if I could control my house, then maybe I could convince myself I had control over everything else. The irony, of course, is that motherhood is one of the least controllable experiences you'll ever have. Children get sick, plans change, sleep disappears. Toddlers refuse the only dinner they ask for. And life keeps reminding us that certainty isn't something we earn, it's something we wish we had. And I wonder how many of us are carrying around coping strategies that make perfect sense at the time, but we've never stopped to ask why they developed in the first place. One of the most fascinating things I discovered while preparing this episode wasn't actually postpartum stuff. It was about something psychologists sometimes called the arrival fallacy. It's the belief that once we reach some major milestone, we'll finally feel complete. We'll feel happy and secure and whole. We tell ourselves, when I graduate, when I get married, when I buy a house, when I finally become a mom, then everything will fall into place. Except it usually doesn't. Not because those milestones aren't meaningful, because they absolutely are, but because life keeps being life. Every season solves one problem and introduces another. When I became a mom, I thought I had reached the finish line. Looking back now, I realized motherhood wasn't the finish line, it was the starting line. I wasn't done becoming, I was just beginning. And maybe that's why so many women feel blindsided, not because motherhood isn't wonderful, but because we unknowingly expect arrival when what we're actually entering is transformation. Sometimes I think about the younger version of me, the woman waiting 13 years to become a mom. If I could sit down with her today, what would I say? I don't think I'd warn her about the sleepless nights or diapers or tantrums. She'll figure those things out. I think I tell her this: you are going to love your daughter more than you can possibly imagine, and you're going to struggle more than you ever expected. Those two things are not in conflict, they can exist in the very same heart. You're going to wonder if you're doing enough. You're going to feel guilty for needing a break. You're going to think everyone has figured something out that you somehow missed. They haven't. You're going to think you've lost yourself, but you haven't. You're becoming someone new, and becoming someone new is almost always uncomfortable. You're going to think that because you wanted motherhood for so long, that you don't have permission to find it hard. You do. Wanting something deeply doesn't make you immune to being human. And maybe, just maybe, the mom you think you need to be isn't the mom your daughter needs. Because my daughter has never asked me to be perfect. She never asked me to have the laundry finished. She never asked me to have dinner planned 3 days in advance. She never asked me to have like the house spotless. Instead, she asked me to watch her, to play with her, to laugh with her, to snuggle her, to listen to her stories, to notice the bug she found in the backyard, or to admire the construction vehicle driving past our house. Usually it's trash truck coming down the street, or to have another sword fight. And it makes me wonder how much of motherhood is spent trying to become the mother we imagined instead of noticing the mother our child is inviting us to become. Before we wrap up today, I want to share a message from one of our listeners. It's Emily in North Carolina. She writes, "Hi, Tessie and Diana. Lately, I feel like I'm grieving the person I thought I would be as a mom. Before my son was born, I imagined myself being patient, creative, calm, and fully present. Instead, I feel overwhelmed. I rush through the day, I lose my patience. I spend more time managing life than enjoying it. Sometimes I wonder if I'm failing because motherhood doesn't look or feel the way I imagined. Did you ever feel that way?" Emily, first, thank you, because I think there are a lot of moms listening who just whispered, "Me too." Because when I read this, I thought that. And my answer is yes, more than I ever expected. I think one of the hardest parts of motherhood isn't learning how to care for a child. It's letting go of the mother we thought we'd be. Not because she was wrong, but because she never had to meet real life. She never had to function on 2 hours of interrupted sleep. She never had to comfort a screaming toddler while worrying about dinner and remembering a dentist appointment. She never had to carry the invisible mental load that comes with loving another human so completely. She only existed in our imaginations. And here's what I've come to believe: we spend so much energy grieving the mom we thought we'd become that sometimes we miss appreciating the mom we're actually becoming. And those are two very different women. One exists in theory, and the other has shown up day after day, messy, imperfect, trying, learning, hair uncombed, teeth questionably brushed, but growing and loving. If I had to choose between them now, I'd choose the real one every single time. You know, when I started writing this episode, I thought it was going to be about disappointment, about the gap between expectation and reality. But somewhere along the way, I realized it isn't. It's about transformation. The mother I imagined was never tested. She never had to make impossible decisions. She never had to apologize after losing her patience. She never had to carry postpartum anxiety. She never had to learn how to ask for help. And she never had to discover that love and struggle can exist in the same heart. She was an idea. The mom I've become, she's real. She laughs harder than I ever imagined I'd laugh. She cries a lot more than she expected. She questions herself more than she'd like to. She's learned that control is often an illusion. She's slowly learning that uncertainty doesn't have to be the enemy. She's still growing. And maybe that's exactly what motherhood was always supposed to be: not reveal the perfect mom that was hidden inside us, but shape us into someone we couldn't have become any other way. So if you're listening today and you're grieving the mom you thought you'd be, I hope you'll also make space to meet the mom you're becoming because she deserves your compassion too. If there's one thing I hope you carry with you today, it's this: getting what you always wanted doesn't mean you'll never struggle. Struggling doesn't mean you're ungrateful. And becoming a different mom than you imagined doesn't mean you've become the wrong one. Maybe the mom you imagined helped you dream, but the mom you're becoming, she's the one your child gets to love. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear a story. Was there a version of motherhood you imagined before your children arrived? How has reality surprised you? You can send us a message through our website or social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Pomcast. That's POMCASTS. And our email is ideas@pearlsofmotherhood.com. We read every single one, and your story may help another mom feel a little less alone. And until next time, remember, the goal isn't to become the mother you imagined. The goal is to become the mother your child needs. Talk to you next time. Bye.